The highway hummed under Ashton's car tires on that fateful day in 2015, like a tired engine trying to remember its purpose. Night had settled warm and thick over the American town he lived in, the kind of summer heat that made the air feel slow and heavy. He had finished a long shift at the Pokémon Center, bandaging a stubborn Growlithe's paw, calming a jittery Togepi, restocking shelves with healing potions. And all he wanted was a bed and the quiet that came with sleep. The dashboard clock glowed 2:14 a.m., and the world outside his windshield was a smear of sodium streetlights and distant neon. His phone buzzed against the console. The name on the screen was unfamiliar, Norton. Ashton answered on instinct, tired and polite. The voice on the other end was smooth and oddly persuasive, a voice that knew how to make a favor sound like a necessity. Norton said Professor Sycamore had stopped answering calls at his private lab. Norton claimed to represent Stardow's Galaxy Research, a company with deep pockets and deeper patience. He said the lab housed a revolutionary project, research worth salvaging. He said Ashton was the closest Pokémon Center worker, and therefore the obvious choice to check the place out. When Norton hinted he could pull strings and cost Ashton his job if he refused, the choice narrowed. Ashton told himself he would be quick. He told himself he would be careful. He told himself he would be home before dawn. He did not know how literal Norton's promises would become. The lab sat half-hidden behind a stand of pines, its facade glass and steel, lights dark except for a single blinking security beacon. Norton's GPS coordinates led Ashton to a side entrance with a keypad and a sticker advertising a new app, PokéLab Decoder. Ashton installed the app on his phone and activated it, and the app unlocked the door with a soft chime. The air inside smelled of ozone and old coffee, of antiseptic and something sweeter, an undercurrent of chemicals and the faint metallic tang of machines that had been waiting. The lobby was a museum of halted ambition. Display cases with prototype Pokeballs, a wall of framed patents, a projector looping a promotional reel of a smiling Professor Sycamore. Ashton's footsteps echoed. He felt watched by the silence. He told himself again to be quick. He moved deeper into the lab, phone flashlight cutting through the dark. The rooms grew larger, the corridors longer, as if the building had stretched while he wasn't looking. He found file cabinets, research logs, and then an empty cage with scorch marks on the floor. A whisper of movement made him freeze. He ducked into a locker and held his breath while a lone technician passed, muttering into a headset. The man's shadow fell across the locker door. Ashton's heart hammered against his ribs. The technician left and said, "Time for me to go home. I've been working too long." To himself, though Ashton, still hiding in the locker, heard him. Ashton exhaled and kept going. Ashton's world tilted in a way that had nothing to do with the building. He felt smaller, lighter, and then the phone in his hand seemed absurdly large. He laughed at himself, fatigue playing tricks, until he opened the camera app and the screen showed a face that was not his, a narrow snout, bright green eyes, a leafed tail curling behind a slender body. He was a Snivy. Panic came in waves. He fumbled with the phone, the touchscreen awkward under tiny, scaled fingers. He remembered Norton's offhand warning about strange effects, and realized with a cold clarity that he had been transformed the moment he crossed the lab threshold. He was not the only one. Voices echoed down a corridor, human voices but with a timbre that belonged to Pokémon. He followed them and found a Charizard in a cage, its wings folded, its eyes tired and human. The Charizard spoke in a voice that made Ashton's skin prickle. "Help me." "I am Professor Sycamore." The words were human, ragged with disbelief. Sycamore explained that Team Galactic, now operating under the alias Stardow's Galaxy Research, had come for his research. They had offered partnership, then betrayal. A drink that looked like coffee had been a trap, a chemical brew that rewired flesh and bone. Sycamore had been turned into Charizard and imprisoned. Ashton, he said, had been changed too. Ashton's first instinct was disbelief, then anger, then a strange, practical calm. He had a mission: find the files Norton wanted and get out. He had a new body and new limitations. He had to adapt. The lab's innards were a maze of experiment rooms and storage bays. Ashton moved with a new kind of agility, slipping through vents and under tables. He was chased by a Pikachu that spoke in a sing-song voice and lashed out with sparks, its aggression inexplicable until Ashton realized the Pokémon could understand him now. His voice translated into cries and chirps by the strange physics of the transformation. He escaped by diving into a laundry chute and tumbling into a room that smelled of old paper and warm metal. There on a pedestal lay a device that made Ashton's breath catch. A Pokédata Master 1995, shaped like Reshore RAM and glowing with a soft, golden light. It hummed with stored knowledge, entries, schematics, encrypted files. He slipped it into his satchel. The device contained the missing research, coordinates, energy signatures, and a file labeled with a name that made his stomach drop: Legendary Project. He pocketed the Pokédata Master and moved to find Sycamore. The lab's corridors were a gallery of experiments gone wrong. Pokémon in cages, half-assembled mechanical limbs, a projector that played a looping image of a child's laughter. The deeper he went, the more he understood the scale of what had happened here. This was not a single betrayal, it was a program. Sycamore's cage was guarded by a single Team Galactic operative, who had the arrogance of someone who believed in his own invulnerability. Ashton used his small size to his advantage. He darted between the guard's legs, tripped him with a well-placed tail flick, and the man went down in anger as he was knocked unconscious from the fall. Ashton snatched the keys and unlocked the cage. The Charizard that stepped out was not the professor's body so much as the professor's mind given a new, terrible form, still brilliant, still human in thought, but with the raw power of flame. Sycamore's gratitude was immediate and practical. He explained the Pokédata Master's true value. It contained the location of a newly discovered legendary Pokémon, a being whose energy could be harnessed as a city-scale power source. Sycamore had intended to use it for good, to end energy scarcity. Team Galactic had other plans. They wanted control. They wanted to weaponize the legend. Ashton and Sycamore moved through the lab together, a strange pair. A small, cunning Snivy and a towering Charizard with a professor's voice. They avoided patrols, navigated test chambers that smelled of ozone and fear, and pieced together the timeline of the invasion. Team Galactic had infiltrated under the Stardo's name, promising funding and legitimacy. When Sycamore refused to hand over his research, they gave him a drink called a triple-shot espresso fire roast, which he thought was just coffee, but found out too late after drinking it, transformed him, knocked him out, locked him up in a cage, and began harvesting data. They reached the lab's central atrium just as Norton stepped from the shadows. He wore a tailored suit and a smile that did not reach his eyes. He introduced himself as Norton, then let the mask slip. He was N, the architect of Team Galactic's new face. His voice was soft and certain, the kind of voice that believed in destiny and the rightness of its own cruelty. "You did well to come," N said. "You were useful. You've done everything you were told like a good little Pokémon, Ashton. Now give me the Pokédata Master 1995. N's men moved like a tide. Ashton fought with the instincts of a Snivy, quick strikes, clever feints, while Sycamore in Charizard form became a furnace of controlled fury. The Pokédata Master changed hands in a scuffle. It skittered across the floor and landed at N's feet. He picked it up as if holding a key. Ashton lunged. N struck him down with a gloved hand, and the device slipped into N's grasp. For a moment, defeat tasted like metal. Then Sycamore's eyes found a glowing stone on a shelf, a Charizardite. With a tail that trembled from effort and hope, Sycamore rolled the stone into the cage. The Mega Evolution was not a spectacle, but a necessity. Sycamore became Charizard X, a storm of cobalt flame and renewed purpose. He broke free and unleashed a torrent of fire that scattered N's operatives. The battle turned. Ashton, still small and quick, darted between legs and claws, and together they forced N back. For a heartbeat, It seemed the night would end with the lab's liberation. N, however, was not a man who accepted defeat. He smiled, cold and certain, and triggered a self-destruct sequence. The lab's alarms began to wail. N fled like a shadow slipping through a crack, his escape a practiced choreography. He left behind chaos, sprinklers that sputtered uselessly, doors that sealed, corridors that began to buckle. The lab's infrastructure was failing. Ashton and Sycamore ran, the building groaning around them. Fire licked at insulation and wiring, turning corridors into ovens. Team Galactic's remaining guards scattered like frightened insects. A falling beam pinned Ashton beneath a tangle of metal. He called out, voice small and human in a body that was not. Sycamore, with the strength of a mega Charizard, lifted the debris and pulled Ashton free. They stumbled into the night as the lab collapsed behind them in a roar of flame and twisted steel. The sky was a smear of orange and ash. N's silhouette was already a memory, a dark shape disappearing toward a waiting jet. Outside, the world felt impossibly large and painfully small. The transformation that had bound them to the lab began to recede. The effects that had transformed Ashton and Sycamore into Pokémon were not permanent once they had escaped the lab's influence. As the first light of dawn bled into the horizon, they were human again, exhausted, singed, and alive. Professor Sycamore took the Pokédata Master 1995 into his care. He promised Ashton it would be secured, studied, and protected from those who would use it for harm. He thanked Ashton with a warmth that was both professional and deeply human. They stood on a rise and watched the lab smolder in the distance. For a moment, Ashton thought he saw a legendary figure on a nearby hill, a white, majestic shape that turned its head toward the moon and then took to the sky. Reassure Ram, or a memory of it, glided away, a silent witness to the night's violence. Sycamore warned that Team Galactic would return. N's escape was not a failure but a promise. The world had shifted, a new threat had learned where to look. Ashton felt the weight of that knowledge like a stone in his chest. He had been used, transformed, and nearly broken. He had also helped save a man and a piece of research that could change everything. When Ashton finally drove home, the road was empty and the air smelled of rain and ash. He parked, climbed the stairs to his small apartment, and collapsed into bed. Sleep came like a tide, deep, dreamless, and necessary. In the quiet, he wondered what tomorrow would bring. He thought of the Pokédata Master, of Sycamore's gratitude, of the silhouette of Reassure Ram against the moon. He thought of Norton's voice and N's smile, and the way the lab had felt alive with intent. Outside, the world turned. Inside, Ashton slept, exhausted and altered by what he had seen. The night had ended, but the story had not. Somewhere beyond the horizon, N plotted, and Team Galactic's shadow lengthened. The return of N was not a single event, but a slow, inevitable tide. Ashton had survived this night, but the future would demand vigilance, courage, and the kind of quiet resolve that comes from knowing you have faced something monstrous and lived to tell the tale. The dawn found him breathing steadily, the last embers of fear cooling in his chest. He would wake and go to work at the Pokémon Center, and the world would keep its ordinary rhythms. But the memory of the lab, the glow of the Pokédata Master, and the echo of a legendary's wings would follow him like a promise. The fight was not over, and the return of N had only just begun.